set? Are we all set? Uh, Good morning, everyone. I think it's a wonderful start. Uh, the topic, innovators leveraging fine edge of AI capabilities. I'm a journalist. I love current affairs. Yesterday morning, when we started, uh, Vic Bhagat, if he's here, we all wanted to cheer for RCB and then started the session on a good note. But by evening, things changed. There was a tragedy that struck in Bangalore. 11 people lost their lives. Now, how could have AI played a role in this? I mean, did the government leverage AI in this? The administration boasts that we have cameras all across in every traffic signals. What if these cameras could have kind of help the system generate a heat map in terms of better crowd management, in terms of suggesting the administration how they could have taken decisions with AI and data that they are capturing. If the system is merely kind of capturing or my movement, it's just another IoT device which is monitoring me. But if it is not helping me with analyzing that data and then putting that data into as a solution, I think we are not using the AI capabilities rightly. And that's where we should have, perhaps taken in the right direction. I think we have a wonderful panel here today from EdTech to marketing tech to kind of hiring and kind of fintech. And it's wonderful. We have a great panel here, fintech, everything. So let's have a session here discussing how each one of them are leveraging the AI capabilities. Like Venki Krishnan said in the morning, AI is here. It's going to be a disruptor and it's going to be pervasive in the next 2-3 years. Nobody can avoid it. But are we building it for the right set of people? Who are we building it for? What is the problem statement that we are trying to solve and why are we building it even? So let's try to address those issues. And I think let me start with Aditi in terms of how she is leveraging AI for her company from an edtech perspective.
Am I audible? Great. So, good afternoon, everybody, and it's such a pleasure to be here at IGIC. And thank you, Prabhu, for that question and the introduction. So, the challenge for education is to model the mind and empathy of a teacher, the soul of a learner, and the context of content. So it was a full stack AI platform that had to be built right from natural language, processing. This is pre the sexy generative AI phase because I started 13 years ago. It's been a labor of love to solve for education through an entire decade for India at population scale. And we started with natural language processing, went on to recommendation systems, went to semantic search, went to computer vision, and rebuilt the entire stack and trained it on education data. So I guess the short answer is we leveraged every fine edge of AI, right from linear regression now to generative AI and LLMs.
I think post-COVID, there's already a transformation in terms of how people use mobile phones for education and kind of moving away from that laptop ecosystem. How has that transition helped you in terms of leveraging the AI capabilities, considering AI has also picked up in the last 2 years of education?
So I don't believe in spikes that come from inorganic factors. I feel like industries have, a sense of growth. And when we look at population scale AI, we look at 60% of it being public sector, 40% of being private sector. And if you look at, AI, it's a technology that is carried on the back of mobile phones or devices and internet. Right? So I think that more than COVID or anything else, because it was a flash in the pan and had an artificial blip, it's been the steady investment in infrastructure, the proliferation of data with companies like Geo, coming in to put 4G in every person's back pocket that actually helped in the distribution and acceptance of education. I think what COVID did was give people a flavor of what tech can do from an assistive perspective, which was earlier on viewed as a threat, much like generative AI is right now.
Thank you. Let me move on with that note to Ankur. Ankur, if we can talk about in terms of marketing, because today everybody wants to kind of replace the customer service agent with AI agents. How do you see that? You can talk about how you guys are leveraging AI.
Yeah, thanks, Prabhu, and thank you all for being here. So when I started with marketing, most people were focusing on creation of ads. They were focusing on image generation. You all might have experienced Ghibli when ChatGPT opened it up. So lot of the marketing was in pieces. The way we started approaching it is more AI agenting ways. The idea is to create an entire platform end to end, right? Like how can I be an assistant to a marketer, but in an ecosystem where CMO can see every step that a team is doing, right? And if you think about it, for a CMO, the core challenge is always conversions, always revenue, always getting leads, or getting more people sign up, right? And uh, will image generation do it, or will a text or copy generation do it? That was always a challenge. And the way we start thinking is, hey, if the challenge is conversion or revenue, how do I use that throughout the funnel so that every step, every team member, every agent that the marketer is using showcase that KRA directly. So I think that's where agents are coming in. I agree with you. Customer success or customer support has been the core region where agents have been used. But I strongly feel like, especially in fintech, hospital databases, education, and like all these segments are very open, very ripe for AI agents to solve for.
Great, thank you. With that note, I think I'll move on to next. We all face challenges in terms of hiring, right? I mean, particularly with AI disrupting the ecosystem, everybody talks about job loss, but we also need to look at the upskilling part of it. And I think that's where Suguru comes in terms of the hiring management. Suguru, if we can talk about how things have shaped in the last 5 years in terms of AI for hiring.
Sure. First of all, my name is Suguru. I'm now living in Bangalore, India. So I work for Findy. Findy is a Japanese startup company. So we are mainly providing one recruiting platform for software development based on scale, and also the analyzing developer productivity, analyzing code. So I would say like now the underlying assumption is the totally changing. So I'm talking about more like engineers perspective, but a lot of engineers now changing. So from more, just coding to more documenting, also like understand business, so now the AI is, especially generative AI or everything. Previously it was more like supporting AI, supporting people, more like making people work more efficiency. But now it become replacing simple tasks, also kind of the workforce. So that's why like for management guys, we don't mind this code is coming from AI or human. Let's say more like now the junior developer kind of job is kind of decreasing. So now the kind of engineer's requirement is now not only coding, more so like understanding the business industry, also the kind of more like a business side, also how to use AI into the development. That's like simply like still the engineers the needs is kind of keeping still important, but in Japan because workforce is shortage, still engineers needs is demanding. But India and America, I think the number of the jobs maybe started affect, especially for junior developers. Now AI is making more senior people, making us smarter, but a little depressing to just kind of junior developers. That's like regarding hiring, it's good or not, but anyway, everyone has to think about what is required for the business. Otherwise, it kind of affect to candidate job both sides. So I'm not answering question, but it's kind of now totally changing the world. It's kind of I'm feeling very seriously.
Do you see a difference in the ecosystem of how the hiring system with AI capabilities is changing in Japan, and considering that you are developing a team here, so how is that in India?
First of all, it's a very different. You gotta say because in Japan, simply getting to applicant super tough. Once you have a job description, nobody apply. That's why a recruiting agency has to reach to the candidate. They started to kind of casual attraction. But here is the once I publish job posting, in relevant people anyway apply to me anyway. I have to screening. Japan is more like getting applicant is more important. Here is more screening is more important. Now thanks to AI or because of AI, everyone easy to create a nicer job description. Also easy to hacking. As a more screening is more matters here. As I kind of affect to the kind of recruiting process. We have to understand your business skill experience. Otherwise the very difficult to see from your resume profile.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Lakshay, Taneja. I think the sector he is in kind of very hot. Post India-Pakistan kind of clashes that happen. In terms of imaging and kind of mapping, everybody is scared. The government is scared in terms of who's kind of mapping my area, and that's where he comes in. So if you can leverage, if you can talk about how you guys are leveraging, we'll talk about the challenges later.
Definitely, I will speak about it. What we are doing is we're working on energy sector, which is one of the area where I think the AI is very very new, because the people who go there are mostly technicians guys. They are 12th pass person, though they don't have degrees and all that. They don't know how to use AI agent. If you start teaching them, that will be like a decade. So we have to build a very simple solutions for them. It should be a plug and play. It should not be very hectic solution, so they have to carry a lot of things. Recently, what things have happened that now the thermal camera have been coming for small thermal camera, which even you can put in your mobile, and the mobile can become a thermal camera. So you don't need a special thermal camera for it. That is already happening. What we are doing, we're helping them in image analytics using like solar panel defect detections. What is a panel defect is there, so they can have a better report for even for commercial industrial unit, because for them everywhere you cannot have a drone. Drone cost is also very high, so it's not possible to do drone scanning everywhere. You need some human manpower for small plants. Second, GS mapping is we are using mostly for solar radiation and weather. But that's we're not only stopping. We're right now working with government in a lot of computer vision technologies solution where they can use the same technology like CV for filtering the plastic, like which plastic should go into cement and which should not go for recycling. Same they are using for solar panel waste, like which panel is waste or not, so that they can negotiate the rate better. Just imagine you know your waste 1 year before. You will be selling the waste better. Okay, you will be negotiating on table. Oh, I know my waste is going to be this much. Can we have a deal for that? And that's where the future is heading. The lot of things is happening, and I think the stampede issue which we discussed will be solved, or it already be working with the government. We are seeing they are looking at computer vision very eagerly. Problem is that India we normally speak about AI agent is mostly LLM, but I think we need to work on computer vision a lot. Because why I say that, because in India everybody has a smartphone and everybody know how to take a picture thanks to Instagram. So when we already know how to take a picture, we already have a good smartphone. So why not we build some agent which actually can tell that whole data and give the industry insights. So that's where we're working on. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Our next speaker, Sajeev. Sajeev is in the fintech segment. He is where kind of he chases money or he goes behind money.
Don't we all?
Sajeev, if you can talk about the disruption.
I'm sorry, we all chase money.
Yeah, exactly. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Prabhu and fellow panelists. Yes, I'm still chasing money. At New Street Tech, we are an ecosystem, a blockchain-enabled ecosystem, which connects banks and last-mile delivery partners. I want to show what we've done through a little video, and then I talk about how we achieved that. If you can, please.
This is a story not just of a single farmer, but of the entire farming community.
Oops.
Okay, by the time the video plays, probably.
I think the video had a bit too much fun last night.
Yeah, this video is actually the story of a farmer who, every government scheme that is supposed to help farmers get loans on time for the crop season has failed. And one of the classic failures was the KCC, Kisan Credit Card Loan Program, which is for marginalized farmers. Now, it used to take a lot of time for the farmer to establish that he actually owns land and that he grows crops in it and that he needs a certain amount of money for buying fertilizers and seeds. And this had to happen within the time that the seeding season happens. Invariably, it never took place because to prove that you own a land, you needed a lawyer to look at documents and confirm that it has happened, that the person owns the land. The KYC check has to happen, a credit bureau check has to happen. And banks shied away from this product because it took a long time, 3 to 4 months mostly to get the product up and running. And the farmer's repayment capability is completely stalled because he's not getting the money on time. What we did was we created a simple intervention through blockchain. We worked on Hyperledger Fabric, which was easy to install. And by this time, we had already done about 1,300 crores of microfinance loans for the bank that we were talking about. And we got this loan done from documentation or customer identification to disbursement in under 5 minutes. It was the first time it ever happened. And we didn't reduce it by 2 weeks or 1 week or a few days. We actually collapsed it dramatically from 5-6 weeks down to 5 minutes. And that was a transformational change. The way we did this was on the back of our ability to collapse processes using technology. Very simple thing. It's cliched. You use technology, collapse processes. Everyone talks about it. What's interesting is when you collapse technology in a tech company is very different from when you collapse technology in a bank, which is depending on core banking systems architected in the late 80s, early 90s. So to change them, we had to think very differently, and that was what we did. Not only did we collapse the time that it took for that loan to be given, we also collapsed the time that it took for us to build this product and deliver it. That was achieved in 3 months, again unheard of in banking parlance. You go to a bank, you introduce technology, you introduce a product, it takes 18 months to get things done. We did it in 3 months, and that was done on the back of AI. This was done about 2-3 years back. We used GitHub Copilot, we used ChatGPT to prepare test cases. We used testing copilots, test aggregators, very simple interventions which allowed us to collapse this. Now that's the story of our company, that we want to make the incumbent heroes of the financial services sector, which is banks largely. They are the custodians of the sovereign country ledger. How do we make them? They're very big, they're elephants, they're majestic, they're very important for the environment, but we want to make them dance. And that's really what our mission is. And I think we've been fairly successful so far. We hope to do more of this. We are users of AI more than actually creating AI. So we hope to deliver more of these success stories in the future.
Thank you. I think in India, I think the AI adoption is also increasing. While many are talking about we are not developing enough and should we compete with US and China in terms of should we depend on the LLMs that they are building or should we custom build our LLMs? I think with that note, I think I'll go to Aditi in terms of in the edtech sector, what are we looking at? Because India is a price sensitive market. To cater to that, how lucrative in terms of how cost efficient products are we building? So if you can talk about in the edtech segment, do we need custom built LLMs and how you guys are managing currently?
So I think before we look at tech, it's very important to understand what value is, right? In any industry, it could be fintech, customer care, whatever. And I think value in education was learning outcomes. And how do you create learning outcomes for a population at scale when you're talking about almost 750 to 1,000 different forms of examination in a country, which basically means syllabi. You're talking about instruction that is delivered in over 25 languages, right? You're talking about state curriculums and which are considered to be, reasonably behind the national curriculums. And then the general handicap that Indian students feel when it comes to students who study in the West, and they're shot at getting at the top of the cream institutions in the world. So I feel like the way to architect to solve for this population scale challenge is to first understand how do you deliver this value. And I was saying in my opening remarks, you can only deliver this value if you're able to replicate how this value is created in the real world. Okay? And that is created by an extremely attentive teacher who knows what they're talking about and knows what curriculum and content the student is currently at, and how do you take them up, keeping their psychology, their behavioral, their confidence and their intelligence and their excitement intact. And I think that was the challenge, that how do you model all of that using data? So the first thing was, how do you encode the curriculum layer? Because if you start building all curriculums separately, you're going to end up wasting a lot of resources. And I think that Embibe is one of the first companies to have probably the highest frugality and the highest return on capital employed. I mean, just to give you some data, about 62% outcomes in test scores with only 73 minutes of engagement. In education, outcome cycles are typically 12 months or longer. We've touched over 200 million students, zero marketing. We run the entire country's test prep today, for IIT and medical, including the content creation, and we're trusted with that. And over 15,000 government institutions impacted, including partnerships with over, 18 state governments, right? And 10 patents in AI, which are original, first of its kind in the world. So my point is that it's not about you build something that doesn't exist in the world, you build something that is needed, and that is the first thing. So how do you look at line of sight from value to business model, to the product and user experience layer, to your data operations, which is the founding pillar of building anything in AI? And that's the dirty work. Nobody wants to talk about it. And then go to the machine learning layer, and then therefore, generative AI, because that's all just a tooling layer at the back end. So the dirty work was encoding all of that content, the curriculums, the knowledge base into one single knowledge graph. And then it was to build a feature set that, coherently combines all of the use cases in a single platform with seamless flow of data and interoperability. So the way we encapsulated the framework for education was inside the classroom, outside the classroom, student-facing and teacher and parent-facing. Okay? Teaching and learning, which is primarily to do with content and visual content, and performing and counseling, which is primarily to do with semantic processing and natural language processing or testing. And we came up with some very interesting things that became an outcome of this kind of a framework approach to build it. So for example, our first patent was filed in 2014, where we realized the test scores are 40% behavior and 60% actual knowledge. And our entire product then focused on how do you do behavioral influencing and then create outcomes when we build our recommendation systems. So I guess just to give you the down arrow on the question that you asked with these broad remarks, the three things that matter is that you have to build first with cognizance of what is the value you're trying to create and be fearless in approaching it. The second thing is to build coherence in the user experience and a 360-degree framework where data can flow, because there is no AI without data and there is no personalization without data. The problem is when companies focus on creating surface level personalization and then they sell it as a gimmick and they sell it as soon as they can monetize it, and then they start going into the venture capital flywheel, right? And I think the third thing is that it is possible to be done with frugality, right? Provided that you really buckle down and persevere. And I think that comes down to classic entrepreneurship. If it comes from the pit of your stomach and you really want it to happen, you will build things at an impossible cost. So the entire stack of Embibe, which has virtual lab experiments to 56,000 videos to 3D models to edge capability in terms of rendering, blah, 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 teacher facing, student facing, is the cost to deliver annually is less than 100 rupees per student. So now we have the pricing advantage because we also own all of our IP. So, and just to conclude, beyond the build cycle, I'd be remiss if I don't point out the fact that it does not stop at the build. I feel like entrepreneurs need to take accountability of the business partnerships, the landscape, the stakeholder management, and the narrative and storytelling that Sajeev so eloquently spoke about, to create the adoption that actually moves the needle on outcomes. Because I think what he didn't talk about is how much time he spent with the bank owners, and the people and the stakeholders to make that giant push that led to that 5-minute loan granting. And my compliments on that achievement. Thank you.
Two things I'll pick up. One is on the language front. In terms of, there's so much language debate happening in the country. From English to Hindi to kind of Kannada, Tamil, all across the language debate is on. What percentage of your modules come in terms of the vernacular languages and what percentage is in English? And how important it is to address in a segment like that?
So it depends on, are you building for Bharat or not? And when I moved back to India, I moved back to India because I used to feel guilty listening to the national anthem in the beginning of movies, and you can't not build for Bharat, right? So we actually built, and that was a challenge we took up, and this is before ChatGPT made it easy, and we launched with human in the loop neuro-machine translation at 1.2 rupees a word and built 11 languages. And today we cover 76% of India's syllabi out of the box, powered by the same knowledge graph at the back end.
The other point is, you said zero marketing. You're killing the business of the person sitting next to you. So I'm just wondering how that happened. I'll talk to you in terms of zero marketing aspect.
So I guess I should have said zero media buying, because I think the remit, because we have a different structure. I raised a majority round from Reliance Industries, which was probably one of the best steps I ever took, because it took me from being a product and a business person, transactionally, who had built for the JEE and NEET space and made me first a dreamer, then somebody really scared, because I was challenged by building a parallel education system. Okay, so for us, it was about the build, and the product was such that when you gave a demo, it led to conversations and closure. So that's what we did. We did person to person, and we built up a strong order book value with very strong unit economics, and that's when I merged the company to Reliance. So this should not say CEO anymore. It's founder Embibe, and always a founder of Embibe. So the cycle's complete.
Ankur, if you talk about trends in the market tech and kind of how do we leverage now? Everybody wants to kind of jump on into this and kind of cost-efficient ways of addressing this. And considering that you've also got backing from Axel, how do you scale if you don't have good investors backing?
I think just to answer the last part, right? Like, how do you scale without investor backing? I think the more important point is, have you chosen a problem statement that people will be willing to pay for, right? Like, that's the whole goal. I think 2021, a lot of people started a lot of companies with like more investor backing than problems they were solving, and that might be the reason why you continuously need money for marketing, right? Like Aditi said, if they didn't need it because the problem state was so strong, and then eventually that married the product that they created, that they didn't need marketing for it, right? Again, like the two parts to marketing is also very, very different. Like, the whole concept of marketing is that we want people to know about us, that this solution exists, right? So if you're not marketing, or so let's not call marketing as something that you spend money on. Even word of mouth is marketing, right? It costs zero money, but it's marketing. And so if you're not marketing, somebody who has a core problem that your product solves doesn't know about you, then this is a failure of your product, right? Like, it's not the failure of the person not searching for you. It's like you need to be there, or somebody needs to tell them that you exist, right? So I think marketing that way is very important. There are aspects of marketing which is your referral marketing, your word of mouth marketing, which are free, which are great to have, which are more viral, which gets you out there, and you reduce your spends that way. Like, for example, I was just using Amazon 10-minute delivery. So it's in very local spaces in Bangalore, right? I told a friend of mine, he has never seen it. Now, Amazon didn't spend a single money on it, but that guy got to know that Amazon also does 10 minutes now, and now he is using it, right? So that's the kind of marketing that could work, right? Then the second part is paid marketing, and where most people spend a lot of money, which is your performance ads, which is your brand ads. Traditionally, we used to do like TV, print media, etc. That takes a lot of money, but there have been models where you can basically work with a media partner and say, hey, it's based on an equity, it's based on a future a cash outcome. So I don't think VC money is actually needed to do marketing that much, right? So for me, now coming back to your the first part of the question, the trends in marketing, I think the core trend right now and the core challenge which is going on in marketing is, hey, how much do you personalize and how much do you ensure there is privacy aspect to it, right? And like if you think about it, I was reading an article from a very premium news outlet talking about how so many apps in our phone are actually tracking 100 plus other apps in our phone on what we're doing. So this, and then they can market and personalize things, but that's, is this right? Is this ethical? Is the right kind of marketing? I think that's the trend. And with AI, my take is, rather than having a more breaking privacy marketing, can you do a experiential marketing? Can you understand what action the person is taking on your app, understand the emotion they're coming in from, rather than like tracking them 10 ways, knowing what's their phone number, calling them 10 times? I think that's where AI trend of marketing is going. Can I figure that out for them, right? So that for me is most important.
Great. I think on the personalization, hyper personalization part of it, are we capturing the data enough? Do we have enough data to kind of analyze at this point, or are we still in this kind of data mining and data capturing stage? So how are you? Because for any sector, right? I mean, whether it's tech or fintech, I think we need that data to kind of hyper personalize things. So
yeah. So Prabhu, I think the most important part is what data do we capture to do personalization, and I think that's the core difference in what you are capturing by hacking somebody's phones or tracking apps versus what you're capturing by knowing the intent of the person, right? I'll give you a very simple example. This is what we solve at Fiverr, right? Traditionally, if I'll tell you that, hey, the ad you are seeing and the ad Aditi is seeing and the ad somebody in the audience is seeing is very different. You expect that experience to carry forward to the website or the app they're going to. You know, like we have that data, but nobody personalizes the website and app from there. And you have like 100 ads running, 100 communication running, but your website is kind of like a newspaper or like a magazine. It's still static the same way. And that's the problem we started solving. We said, hey, we don't have a lot more data. There are a lot of regulations. Can I use the data that I already have? Right? So people are collecting data. There have been a big trend of adoption of CDPs, which are composable CDPs, your data collection platforms. There's a lot of ad platforms that exist, a lot of data that happens on your website and an app that you capture. The point is, how do you use them? I think that's where, like, what I have realized while talking to a lot of CMOs is that people don't have, or CMOs don't have an idea how to use the data, and that's where AI could win or could initiate things for them, right? So I still don't think data is a problem. I think the problem is uses of data. People are not able to use it correctly. Like nobody knows how to take out an insight from a data, right? Is somebody coming to your website and bouncing off in 10 seconds? Is that happening on the first scroll or the second scroll, right? That's a very small data, but it's a very important data, right? So that's I think that is what AI can unlock a lot, because it can churn, it can just read a ton more data than a human can, and can give you ideas on what can happen.
I'll come back to you on data production later. We'll talk about it. I'll go to Suguru in terms of how are kind of the data production laws different that you see from Japan to USA to India? How AI capabilities in terms of adoption is going to change?
So you're asking more regulation side?
Yes.
Okay. So I think what is interesting is now it's a very different by country. Yeah, like China, for example, they try to govern the data by themselves. America is now maybe Trump getting to domestic side. In Japan, what is interesting is Japan is kind of based on the trust. So they are more encouraged to enterprise company to use the data with autonomy. That's why Japan has not so much historic regulation, only guideline something, but it's kind of a little flexible. It's not good enough, Then India is, I think, in the middle. The still not like China, not like America. So I don't think so much kind of strict regulation here, but maybe there's a guideline. My point is one of the kind of strategy that kind of like China, America, because they have a huge data, huge asset, they're going to buy themselves. But it's not like, I don't like, kind of only, country versus country, it's kind of world, digital world war, but rather than say, like, for example, if kind of India, Japan regulatory, it's still a little bit flexible, maybe kind of collaborate, to decide what kind of data is connecting. Otherwise, all of the countries, even the internet is connected to everyone, but everyone is go to only their own country to own their data by themselves. They don't share anything. In what their AI is kind of making to countries more kind of separate. It's kind of sad, kind of regulation is still changing. That's maybe now each country is checking, seeing the kind of how each country is going. Then maybe India, Japan kind of seeing. America is kind of each state setting a regulatory by state. They kind of make it a little bit complicated,
I think AI is evolving, and countries are kind of still thinking on regulation. Should we regulate now? Should we let it free and then let the adoption go and then regulate it later? I think that's an important topic to deliberate on. So, if you can highlight what are the challenges from a hiring point that you see from a regulatory perspective, you can compare to Japan and India.
Hiring standard point view is the now more like, for America, taking visa is more strict. Yeah, Singapore as well, because kind of more leveraging their own labor force than using AI. They're a little bit stopping to hire the workforce outside of the country. This something happen could be in America and Singapore, for example. I don't know so much about Europe side. Japan is still Japan needs the workforce. That's why even though we have to use AI anything, even though AI is now evolving, but Japan's kind of number of jobs is still so much demanding, so much demand. Yeah, that's why Japan now, Japan and India start kind of more government has agreed on more sending to people from India to Japan. So that's why, like in Japan, it's more like try to adapt the people outside of the country, also leveraging AI. It's kind of happening. Then in India side is the huge, workforce.
Yep.
So now, if the AI is taking the kind of small jobs, where's the labor force going? This kind of a little bit challenging. Maybe smarter people might find they can find any jobs, but what are the others? So this point is still I'm not sure, but it's like Japan is kind of a country. It's difficult to fill all the jobs by people. Also, not only that all the jobs require only AI. Yeah? Still kind of hospital, the plant, still labor, the workforce is needed. In this kind of point of view, the Japan needs to kind of welcome to people from India side.
Thank you. I think with AI adoption, we also see the requirement for data centers, the requirement for energy consumption has increased, right? Then OpenAI Sam Altman came and said people are saying thank you when the Ghibli images are generated, that's wasting his resource. I think we need to understand that and cater to that. I think, Lakshay, if you can talk about the challenges in the energy sector and then, how it has picked up over the last few months rather than years.
Definitely, I think when we talk about data center, US already is. You have seen they are now canceling a lot of data center plans because they understand the land is also issue. That's one of the issue. But energy is a very very core issue when it comes to AI because as soon you search on Google Chrome, you are using 1/10 less energy. That's the difference you're already seeing when you do Chat GPT and normal Google Chrome. So so as a person, when I normally go in some clean energy, I say, "Oh, are you using Chat GPT?" They, yes. So I say them, "No, you're not making clean energy. At least use Google Chrome for that." So you can save 1/10 by that only. The second thing, which I think in energy, is the innovation is very less here. because it is a post-year traditional sector which was there. But as soon as renewable energy has entered, a lot of private players have entered, like small players, small MSME, which are now opening doors for startups, which are looking for this innovation solutions. One of them is what we are doing is image analytics. Uh, because I think when it comes to AI, we have seen the Chat GPT, LLM, we have already seen AI agent. Uh, where I want to make a difference is the energy sector, because uh, this is the only sector which has not gone through that phase of tech which you normally see with other sectors. Like still we use the clamp meters and electrical tools for measuring the data, but there's no better way of calculating the data, getting the report generated. Uh, you cannot use a normal smartphone for reading some parameters. So that's what we want to work on. Let's build it more accessible for the technician on ground, and not only more technician, more accessible, more affordable also. Because as soon you remove one tool from his kit, you are actually reducing cost for him to buy that kit. So he can go less on that. He can start his own work, and I think this is the only job which is very very hard to replace compared to other jobs, because here you require human. You cannot have a AI do every electrician work because very difficult to do. In future, it will do robotics also, but for now, at least, I think in India, electrician's job is very difficult. They require a lot of tools. We already seen dust storm. I think everybody has seen Delhi NCR. If they are from, they have seen the dust storm in Bangalore. Whether we have already seen rains. So this is already creating more problem for energy sector because of wires loose. You already know. So that's where I think a lot of scope is there. Uh, Data center is one of the point which will require a lot of energy, but apart from that, a lot of problems is already there which we need to solve.
Great. Thank you. See, beyond the talent challenge and the funding as well, like Aditi pointed out, everybody is chasing money, and some of the big tech companies are grabbing all the money. So how do I'll go to the fintech guy in terms of how, while he chases money, it's also important for startups to kind of attract the capital that they want to build that product, right? So how can the startups, when big companies are trying to raise or kind of take away the big share, and we have a funding climate where Indian AI ecosystem is kind of attracting less funds, how can startups kind of capitalize on that?
That's a very interesting question, Prabhu. This phase of evolution is like no other phase of evolution that we've witnessed so far. People could go and take a conventional business model, articulate their story very, very well, and get an investor interested who's interested in that sector and do things differently. Raise money and scale up. This was a standard operating model from the investors, I mean, from the investee side of view. That's changed. What I've seen is if there is no AI involved in your pitch, in your story, in your way of life, I think investors, you're not on the radar. Even conventional investors, family offices, they're all looking at what's going to happen if we fund you and somebody else comes up with a breakaway model. Nobody knows what that breakaway model is. So you're exploring, you're figuring it out. So I would say there's a huge, huge challenge. I'm not a doomsday sayer, but one has to admit that it's changed. I think how I see this evolve is what intervention is going to change the world for the 8.2 billion people that are today there, right? Where's the maximum impact going to come? Now, if you look at, I got a very short list of threatened professions: drivers, mechanics, factory workers, radiologists, lab technicians, general physicians, surgeons, programmers, developers, engineers, architects, interior designers, delivery boys, and I can keep going on. I mean, just jotted this down out of curiosity. What could go now? Any business which is in all these interventions, trying to automate these things, and you're going to see a whole lot of professions change character. Today, a public school English head of department teacher earns about 10-12 lakhs of rupees. She is part of that 8.2 billion population that we're talking about in a country which is doing very, very well, like India. And then there are others who are teaching English in places very far and remote, and God knows what their earning capacity is. They are going to be replaced. Are they going to be replaced? Those are questions that everyone is asking. And so if there is a EdTech intervention which is seeking funding, will the investor look at that as the intervention of the future and say, stay sustained, invested in that segment? Will drones replace delivery boys? So the gig economy is going to disappear? We don't know the answer to that. It's not going to disappear immediately, but will it disappear is the question. Will driverless cars come and change everything else? I mean, Bangalore, it'll take a long time, But so the decision that I could be a fly on the wall in an investment committee in any of the investors that we know of, and I could be it could be very interesting conversation to see what they're having. There should be the short-term investor who says, okay, put money in this, take it out 3 years. We should be able to do this and sell it up to some other guy who comes and takes this on, or we're going to look at change the world. There are impact investors who are going to stick with that company and help them transform. I think the future is in those investors who are going to start small, invest in not the technology, but in the founder and the team and the thought process that is there, which is leading that company. So you're not investing in APs, but you're investing in the versatility of that team to do things on the fly and sustain with them and take them to the next logical place.
Thank you. I mean, like you pointed out, everybody wants to jump onto that AI, and if you're not using AI, it's like you feel that FOMO, right? And when you pitch it to the investors, I think that's where investors are finding it challenging today. Like, how do I evaluate? Everybody's coming up with AI capabilities, and I think morning Prem Parthasarthi made a point. Plastic was a solution at some point, then it became a problem. EV was a solution at some point, then in kind of how do I discard the batteries, that became a problem. AI is a solution probably today, and once AGI comes in, that might turn into a problem for many. So I think the challenges will keep shifting, how we kind of, what's the requirement, what the consumer end want. Aditi, I want to go back to that funding aspect. How has the funding ecosystem changed from the initial years and now? We are talking so much about AI.
So I honestly feel that the funding ecosystem hasn't really changed. Again, contrarian view, sorry. But I feel like people invest in people, and people invest in people who can see the second bounce of the ball. Because now, more than ever, I think that what did we build in the past that got funded? What got funded was cognitive architectures, or which are companies and systems that can move the needle on something. So you have a large market and you have a wedge. Okay. Now, whether that wedge is made out of Gen AI, it's made up of Web 2.0, Web 1.0, or was just Flipkart, a wedge is a wedge. Okay. So you have to think about it at that level of abstraction. What Gen AI presents is an opportunity to make that $1 become $10 in your pocket. So, for example, I wonder, with all of the esteemed panelists sitting next to me, how much of sameness exists across their stacks. All of them have sat in separate offices solving for agentic UX, okay, which did not need to happen, because there is so much of sameness now, right, from machine learning operations to the agent training layer to the LLM stack, and what you're really encoding and what is really going to become the differentiator now is how do you encapsulate and train human knowledge for large-scale replication. So think about, there is an amazing doctor, okay, and let's say she treats infertility, and she's sitting in Mumbai, and she's got 10,000 patients, and she's amazing, and she's got massive fees. And perimenopause and menopause, and I don't know why there's no app for that, but whatever. So what happens is that doctor has these patients in that localized knowledge. Now, who's going to go in and pick up her decision tree, train the way she train the algorithms on the way she looks at patients, look at her case files, look at her recommendation stack, and then do that in a sampled way across a range of different countries with different doctors and biases. And then do a RAG or a fine tune on an existing LLM. Because what you're doing is you're starting with a much higher baseline. Generative AI is like a fresh college grad. And now you have a fresh college grad, and what used to be, a payment system acceptance capability on your phone that made every Indian an entrepreneur, now is going to become a research agency, a marketing agency, even a coding agency in every person's back pocket. So I feel like what we're seeing is a fundamental shift. I feel like VC is no longer venture capital, is no longer going to be a 10-year funding cycle with opaque walls. It's going to become a transparent petri dish, okay, with a lot of sameness being leveraged and questions being asked around why do you really need so much money? And the money is really going to be invested in encoding the knowledge, which was going to become the sustained differentiator. Because guess what? In a sea of 7 billion humans, those people became sustained differentiators in their locality. Now the opportunity is to replicate them manyfold. And can I add a comment on K-12, if you don't mind? I feel like we should banish schools. And that's been one reason why I've stepped out of education. And let me give you a data point for that. So we trained, our AI and obviously built a huge tag verse, right? So we picked and tagged about 3 to 5 million questions and encoded them on Bloom's taxonomy, which is basically, are you rote learning? Are you, doing comprehension? Are you analyzing? Are you applying? And then it gets to an interesting level. It says evaluating. It asks the question, does this knowledge even deserve to exist? And then synthesizing new knowledge, which is how do you create new knowledge out of what exists? That is the human level. So what's going to happen is that sorry, I was giving you a data point. I had like a brain fart. But 3 million questions, when you tag them, you realize that 99.9% of high school textbooks and the assessment items in them do not go beyond analysis, which means faithful replication of knowledge is considered intelligence. And that is why we're all scared of Gen AI and the jobs are getting displaced. So what needs to happen is that we need to retrain the way we educate our students based on cognitive thinking, critical thinking, and questioning underlying knowledge. Now, how will that happen? Guess what? Generative AI is going to do individualized tutoring the day it understands how to deliver empathic coaching, and we are able to take all of this offline tag, whatever, stuff that edtech companies have done so far, and use it to, create embeddings and models that allow each Gen AI to, without hallucination, train each student and say, so why does gravity really exist? And then the student has to think and respond, and it can go back and forth. Again, without hallucination, without scaring the teacher. So that English teacher you spoke about, who makes 12 lakh rupees an annum, will now be able to train so many more classes and so many more children, and maybe that will solve the teacher supply problem. So guess what? Gen AI is basically boss mode on for human beings. What we're facing right now is the disruption, before the greatness arrives. And I am also inclined to agree with you on what you said. We don't think it through enough. So when we think about EVs, we don't think about battery. When we think about nuclear fusion or fission or whatever we're doing to harness, not fusion, to harness energy, we don't think about waste disposal. And I think it's responsible for us, and the correct thing for us to think about how do we harness this new technology that's here to stay, which is basically intelligent infrastructure. It's not going to eat you up in your sleep, right? And make it sensible so that now 7 billion people become entrepreneurs. How great is that?
I think that's a good point. When businesses are built on K-12, she had a different perspective on that. And considering that, with the Reliance backing, I would say Reliance came up with the slogan, "Kar lo duniya mutti mein," 2 decades back. And then now with LLMs kind of helping you in terms of everything is in your pocket. I mean, you just with a voice command or with a text prompt that you can ask anything and then you have an answer. I think that's where she goes in terms of how do we kind of educate the people, right? In terms of how I think in India, particularly when we skipped the laptop ecosystem, we didn't educate one section of a society in terms of how to use the internet for better. I think immediately we jumped onto the mobile generation, and then people started using it differently, and then the data capturing was different. With that note, I think I'll end this here, and then I'll open up for questions from the audience. I think we've had a great panel in terms of vibrancy from where they are. Like we have people, building businesses in US, Japan, India, and trying to scale in India, I think that's a good ecosystem that we have. Please, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Does anyone have questions? Can you pass on the mic, please?
Hi, this is for Goyal. You mentioned that AI could actually understand the customer, right? And change marketing strategy based on that. Can you just expand a little bit on that thought? Because I didn't totally get it.
Yeah. So I think the way right now, so I'll give you like classic one example, right? Like a lot of times we consider that for example, in a website, people are coming in, right? Like, and we don't have any idea who they are. And if they're not taking any action or if they're converting. So take a very simple example. In one of our customers, what we realized, the people converting on the websites were spending almost 3 seconds on a particular banner. And that was almost at a 80% repetition, right? Like 80% of the time, my converts were actually spending 3 seconds on a banner, right? Now I know there's something that banner is triggering as an emotion that they are going and filling the form and coming to us. So that's the kind of input that AI can understand. It was very, very difficult earlier to get to that level of clarity of what people are consuming and why they are taking an action. I think that's what I was talking about. Like you can go to that level, right? That is what's possible with AI now.
So my questions for Aditi. I love what you said, boss mode on for 7 billion people, everybody can be an entrepreneur. Back to your point about the education system, then shouldn't it evolve now to actually teach everybody to be an entrepreneur rather than just learning of facts?
So, sir, could I know your name, please?
I'm Gaurav Ved, founding partner at Ventures Inc. I advise other companies on building products and innovation.
It's very nice to meet you, Gaurav. So I think education system needs to change. I think we both agree about that, right? Now, whether or not it is to train everybody to be an entrepreneur, I don't know. But I feel like there are 3 skills that are very essential in the new world, and also things that we believe, or I believe, and the team believes that generative AI will not excel at. The first thing is critical thinking. We talked about that because the ability to make intelligent decisions and get things done by a lesser intelligence, let's put it that way, which is what happens in call centers. That, wait, I'll put you through to my supervisor, right? So guess who's the supervisor now? All right. So that's the first thing. The second thing is empathy. I feel like, we had nerd mode on, for the last 10 years. Everybody thought, I'm a developer, so I don't talk to anyone. But guess what? You have to look into each other's eyes and say hello and exchange warmth. Because trust-based transactions are again going to become human. And, things that are actually touch-based, which is caregiving and things like that, are going to become mainstream human professions now, right? The third thing is dexterity, or things done with your hands. It doesn't matter what Boston Dynamics shows on Instagram. That's my primary source of information on robotics, by the way, just giving myself away. There's no robot today that can tie its shoelaces. So doing things with your hands and enabling, everybody to become, who's that cool Marvel superhero, that guy, who's got Jarvis as a robot?
Iron Man.
Iron Man, sorry. Why don't I think okay, so to make every technician Iron Man at the last mile. So I think, so dexterity is what we need to learn. So these are the 3 skills I feel. And I feel like entrepreneurship is a propensity. And it comes from wanting or not wanting to take a risk. But knowing how to harness AI, is, I think, a very important skill. So I feel like a skill-driven education, which has taste-driven exposure to knowledge and some basic hygiene, so you can make conversation and appreciate the world a lot more, is what's coming. Unfortunately, governments don't reform unless there's a gun to the head. And with 40% of jobs at risk today, I feel like that's about to happen. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was brilliant. You should write a book about that.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll touch upon another point. Yes.
In next, let's say, 5 years. I am an educationist, I'm a professor and head an institution. And I would like to know from you,
It's nice to meet you.
Because somewhere at the schooling, right, I think teachers are must, and we should refrain from using a lot of AI there, because it is when the brain is getting developed, and we should allow it to happen. And maybe at the secondary and post-secondary, we can allow them to use AI, right? But starting from the beginning, I mean, a 6-month-old or 1-year-old, a baby being given a phone to watch a cartoon and feeding that, what do you think our next generation is going to be? And in that context, put together, because you work in the tech, I work in education space, how would we foresee next five years?
So, you raise a very important question. And I also wanted to talk about the cartoons, the very scary cartoons that, you know, children watch in the early years. They're designed to increase view time, and they are encoded with certain sounds which mentally stimulate the wrong part of the brain that is akin to drug addiction. So those cartoons are not something I endorse, and I feel like all technology should not be painted by the same brush. I actually feel like in the very early years, kids should play with wooden blocks and experience touch and empathy a lot more. However, so I don't think that we're in a world anymore where we cannot expose children to technology at the very early years, because you have to be fluent and you have to be able to speak technology in the right way. Now, the problem is that because we don't have a structured curriculum, people use it in any way that they want. And parents feel that buying an iPad is an imperative, but what to do on an iPad is not clear. In fact, we partnered with Apple India recently, and Apple, per se, is very keen to sell iPads, and they have an ecosystem, but they don't focus on what to consume. Now, just like any tool in the kitchen, I mean, I think it's important to use it right. So I'll give you a beautiful use case which comes from a small story, and I will leave the rest to your imagination, sir. I was in Udaipur in the tribal area department, and I met these children who were from tribal caste, and they went to a school, and they were considered the weakest segment in Udaipur district. So we spent about 20 days training them and testing Embibe systems on them to see how we are able to improve their learning outcomes. And there was one girl who scored 86% marks in atomic structure, because the system used reinforcement learning and taught her pattern recognition and questions, and it's not really great to be able to achieve that. But then I asked that girl, I said, "Aap anu mein believe karte ho? Maine to kabhi dekha nahi hai. Do you believe in the atom? I've never seen it. So how do you believe in it, that it exists?" And she said, she took a step back and she didn't have an answer. And then I took her to YouTube at that time, because Imbibe did not have content, and showed her the atom and the electron microscope and things like that. And you should have seen her face. So the moments of wonder that can be created through the right exposure, for example, of 3D interactive technology or 3D visuals. And think about the sparse time a teacher has, and the way maybe I studied an atom growing up, and the way you can see a Golgi body in 3D. When you scan your textbook, those moments of wonder can be created through technology. The second thing that can be done through technology really well is personalizing the homework, or personalizing the experience of every child's journey through this. So as an educationist, when a teacher leaves the classroom, the only thought on their head is, how many students actually understood what I was saying? So Imbibe gives you an opportunity to press a button, and every child gets homework at their level. So it's like they have their own, personal educationist mentor. And I feel, sir, that in this context, when the moments of wonder and the visual tools for that, and the personalization and the algorithmic, and the effort for that can be created through AI, the teacher is left to understand faces, engage, reinforce, encourage, empathize. And that's how tech should be used during the school years. But I don't think so. We are in a world anymore that if we completely cut students off and make them non-fluent on technology from their early years, that they will be able to cope, or be at an advantage at the later years, but structured right.
Thank you. There's a great interest on EdTech. Let me also tell you this. CBSE syllabus had AI from 9th standard since 2019. But are we teaching today in CBSE schools AI? If you look at the adoption rate, is less than 30%. Many of the schools do not even know the syllabus. Now, the point is, are we again training the trainers? Who's teaching? The government needs to initiate the support system, right? I mean, today we are talking about are we catching up with India and China, US and China in terms of building LLMs? No, the question is also like how quickly are we adopting things in terms of AI, and are we teaching that, putting that back to the system in terms of people leveraging that? And in terms of education system, I think we should, I mean, when so much change is happening at a fast-paced thing, I think we should quickly adopt and then make the change. With that note, I think if we have no more questions in the interest of time on lunch, I think I will not keep you, hold. I want to add on that when Aditi said, she doesn't endorse certain animation. Anime has been part of the Japan for a long time.
Yeah.
How do you see that? I mean, in the interest of creativity, how do you see that differently from what Aditi has?
More like anime?
No, I have nothing against anime. I just said that the way these teeny toons, whatever, those specific cartoons are done, they're designed with algorithms to create a drug addiction mindset for children. Anime is great. I mean, my brother's a big fan of Goku, He would kill me if I would say anything against his favorite character. So, yeah, but go ahead.
It's kind of, what is the question? Sorry.
His question was on, how do you see the education system differently in Japan?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of maybe kind of same thing. Yeah. Who is kind of teaching, how to use AI, like more education system? Because Japan education system is, I'm the right person to answer, but little traditional. Not all the kind of teacher adopts the AI, but kids are already using AI. Then as Aditi mentioned, maybe using AI is important, but more than this, how to kind of think of it. Creative thinking. It's kind of fundamental thinking is kind of also work ethic. It's kind of fundamental thing is getting more important. But now back to the education part is the kind of maybe very crucial. This guy who is teaching AI, in Japan, still who is teaching more proper English. So many problems in Japan. That's why, like personal education matters, same in Japan actually. It's more kids and parents, more like customizing the more education for their kids. Otherwise, it's difficult to learn only school. But school is important to teach kind of fundamental things. But rather than this, more AI or any kind of business things or like different kind of criteria, language, English. These kids have to learn from other else.
Thank you. I think with that note, we've had a good discussion from a vibrant panel in terms of funding, scaling, hyper-personalization, hiring challenges, and also like some of them pointed out in terms of it's also important to see the value that we create. That's what will take us where we are. And are we solving the right problems? So with that note, let's have a round of applause for the vibrant panel here. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.